so I look very casual and lean back.
Hey, but you're not, or you're faking it.
Always, always,
Always.
right? Yeah, always be faking. No, that's something else.
Honestly, I was just looking at your LinkedIn page real quickly, and you have so many roles open. Wow. I'm Oh, here we go. It finally ends here. Just at founders team, Margin and Sons, Google Academy program trainer, speaker, brand leadership community, CDOIQ, Digital
So
Analytics Society. You, where do you find the spare time?
I, I don't. So the rule of thumb is saying it's time is not something you have; it's something you take.
Yeah.
So I guess I take it from I do not go hunting and I do not play tennis and I do. There's a lot of stuff I don't do.
Yeah.
I think this is more fun.
You just tour the world to all these various, because I have to say I really like the LinkedIn post you always post with the mandatory airplane shot.
Yeah,
And always with, if you're traveling with someone, you always have a photo of them, or they're at least in the shot as well.
yeah. I'm trying it, and sometimes it actually happens that sometimes it by chance. So I was traveling with, I was after Measure Camp Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I was full plane, no coordination. I then end up next to Brian Clifton. Ta-da!
Small world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well,
Did,
it
did,
is
did he?
well since he lives in Sweden and his closest airport is Copenhagen.
Yeah, I was just about to say, did he get on the wrong flight then? Because he lives in Sweden.
Yeah, no, but so for him in the south of Sweden they use Copenhagen Airport
Okay,
because
and they just take the train.
yeah because Malmö Airport is like it's in the boondocks. It's like kind of I don't know what the worst airport in the Netherlands are, but it's like that's probably it, and then a little worse.
Yeah. Is it a destination for Ryanair? Is it one of those kind of
Yeah,
airports?
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have like Ryanair will fly you to Malmö, and it will be like you'll save 5 euros compared to flying to Copenhagen, right? And then
But
then you find out that you need the boat, planes, and helicopters, and walking for 8 days, and a native guide to guide you.
yeah, I had the same thing one time flying to Stansted in London. They call it London Stansted, but it took me an hour and a half by bus to get
Yeah,
from Stansted to London. I was like, I'm never doing this again. And the closest airport I have is like a 10-minute drive, Rotterdam Airport.
yeah,
And if I need to go to London, I just go to London City. I mean, it's relatively affordable, but you're in the heart of the city. Heathrow, the same kind of story. You need a 40-minute train ride. No, it
yeah.
wasn't a train ride. I think it's like a 15 to 20-minute train ride, but you pay, I think, like 50 euros for a ticket, or you need to take the tube, which takes you about an hour to get somewhere,
Yeah.
anywhere near the center. It's amazing how they market this. But good to see you
That was
again. It's
actually how I ended up taking the train to Stockholm 2 weeks ago. Because there's a train. Well, I have to make one change, but I can take the train from Copenhagen to Stockholm. I
Yeah.
have to change once, and it's 5.5 hours. If I fly, everything included, is 4 hours.
Yeah, and a
Right?
lot more stress though.
Yeah, but and it's 4 hours without with so many different things, but with the train, it's just going into the station, sitting down, then
Yeah,
getting out on the platform, getting into another train, finding a seat, sitting down, working. Like it's a
I have to
mental
say,
exercise. Yeah,
yeah, it's a lot more relaxing, especially if you don't need to change. I keep hearing stories from my mother. She used to be a stewardess with Alitalia back in the late '60s, early '70s,
yeah,
and she said it's, aviation these days, it's nothing compared to what it used to be. It is just mass and masses of people, trying to squeeze them into these funnels. It feels like A/B testing kind of thing.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
we got a funnel here. Push these people down there. We'll see people who drop off because they forgot their passports or are not, had something in their bag that they weren't supposed to have. But I'm glad you got home safely from Measure Camp Amsterdam, because that was my first one. That was my indoctrination into the world of Measure Camps, and I have to say it was quite fun. I didn't get to see any of your of your talks. I jumped into a few random ones, but I have to say the atmosphere was pretty amazing. But
Mm.
having said that, I know you are someone who has visited Conversion Hotel. Is that the number one place to go if you want to, in terms of casualness?
So I think, so yes, it is. I would say that the Conversion Hotel, it's kind of it's a, it's an all-inclusive experience in the sense that it covers your entire weekend, right? And it's with the teamwork and exercises and bandland and competitive things and sessions, and so there's so much going on at Conversion Hotel. So you kind of need to take a couple of days off when you get home because
Just about to say, yeah,
yeah,
not during, but after.
yeah,
But
exactly.
but what about Super Week though? I mean, Super Week. I was it you or I think Kevin Svensson said that they rented out the entire hotel, so people
Yeah,
even brought their family who went to the swimming pool and kind of.
yeah. But I think but um, I think it would technically you say it's the same conference, but with the Conversion Hotel, everything has been squeezed into 2 days, right, or 3 days. So it's like you have to do 5 days of socializing in 2 days. So in that sense, sure, Measure Camp is amazing in the sense that there's one restaurant, there's one bar, there's one
Yeah.
hotel. If you leave the hotel, you're in a forest. That's not where you want to be at night in Hungary, right? So, so you kind of you have two options: either you socialize with people, or you can sit in your room watching Hungarian television.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
well now these days you can probably go use the Wi-Fi to watch your own stuff. But in the old days, that was the options, right?
Jeez. Yeah. As a I don't want to throw around labels, but as an introvert, I know that is going to get to me. 5 days of socializing. I
Yeah,
mean, I love these kind of one-off discussions and talking about it with a few beers. But I've even heard from other people who said 5 days is just so much.
yeah, and it is. So I think I would recommend that if you go, then you start by going for 2-3 days. Then consider whether you want to crank up or whether that's enough. So if you come in the middle of the week, that's where normally you have like a bell curve that the people, the attendees are there. Well, there's actually a lot of people coming in Sunday evening. So they will come in Sunday during the day and then socialize a bit Sunday evening, and then there is a good attendance from Monday morning, but again towards Friday afternoon, it's like it's tapering off. So being the last session on Friday, it's
It's not really a compliment then, I guess.
no. It's like okay, so you insist on talking. Okay, I offered you a free bar and 7 beers. You still insist on talking. Okay, I'll put you Friday at 4.
So at Monday, you need to walk around, start buying people beers, and say, "Hey, but if I buy you beer, you're going to be sitting there on Friday. Otherwise, the whole room is probably going to be empty
Yeah,
by that time."
exactly. So
Yeah, no, but the photographs. I remember one year they had a drone flying around the area. Even though you said don't go out at night, it's amazing. It's yeah. I think if I would take my wife and kids, then my wife would be like, we're not staying indoors. Let's go outside. Let's go hiking. Let's go see the surrounding areas.
yeah.
I appreciate the work that you do, but we're going.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, but I know a lot of people so who brings their wives and it's like, okay, honey, I will be doing this and you can be doing that. Peter Meyer had his wife there. She spent all her time in the pool and spa area, just hanging out there because all the nerds were at the conference. So she was just there, and the rest of the hotel was booked out for nerds as well. So it's kind of like she had it all to herself. Like, oh, which one of the 7 saunas will I choose today?
The spa people were just happy that there was somebody there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, so Measure Camp, we bumped into each other. It wasn't preordained. We knew that we were both going through the wonders of LinkedIn, and you had an interesting talking point that we both kind of saw eye to eye on. And if I'm paraphrasing here because it came to I think that the gist of it was 25 years on. With digital analytics, with all this marketing technology. And correct me if I'm wrong, why are we still struggling? in delivering value and insights with the technical advancements that we have seen. I think that was that about it.
Yeah, well, so for me, I think that was one of the stories that we touched upon, right? And for me, I think that's something that I am talking about now, because I feel that we as analysts need to change the narrative. For 25 years, we've been saying we just need more data, right?
Yeah, that's true.
A little more data, and there's. So I've been having this conversation a couple of times, right? But the problem is that. So first thing, consistency, right? Every time a new CMO comes in, he looks at your setup and he says, "What the fuck is this? This doesn't work. I want something different." So he breaks continuity and he starts over, right? So you keep breaking continuity. So you have like every 5 years, every 3-4 years, you do a re-implementation.
New tracking plan,
new tool, new problem, new something, and that's kind of okay. So why? Well, I want things in a different way, and he's the boss, so he gets it. And as consultants, we're not gonna cry foul, because then they'll just go to somebody else to get an implementation. But from a data perspective, it means that you have very little continuity to act on.
Yeah, sure.
So, and that's one thing, right? So, and then the other problem is that even when you start having the data, because we have this exercise that if you look at the market saying, okay, so Matthew, close your eyes and then look inside your inner Rolodex and saying, okay, compared to analyst, how many implementers do you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a little scary, right? Then because you will probably, if you're like me, you will know you got 99 analysts, 99 implementers, but not one analyst. It's like, so people are really good at implementation, and then they can do amazing implementations, and we do amazing implementations, and we can take a tracking plan and we can implement it, and then
we can even argue for a good implementation. We've got all the hypotheticals lined up for you, saying why we need to track this extra data point. But I get you. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's amazing. And one of the things that I feel that it's touching a nerve. I say, well, the challenge is that for an implementation is binary. It works or it doesn't. It's very easy to tell whether you have an implementation or you don't.
Yeah.
Right? But when I tell you to, okay, Matthew, then now we have the implementation, we have years of data, go analyze.
Yeah. Like, grab your crystal ball. What can you see?
Yeah, exactly. So, and the challenge there is that the implementation it's a pure Karate Kid exercise, right? It's wax on, wax off. Everybody has it on their backbone. It's like they can just do it in their sleep.
I haven't heard that one in a long time. Mr. Miyagi. Yeah, sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. and that's an implementation. So of course they're more complicated than that. Yeah. But it's pretty straightforward. But when I tell you, so what framework do you use when you analyze analytics data? Most people are like, what? There's a framework? And in most cases there isn't, right? Because there's never been a structured approach to analytics, because in a lot of cases we just ended up with, so you get the report or you get the numbers on a dashboard, but then again, there.
You get different types of arguments when you want to do an implementation. I mean, I think I've come across, I don't want to say all of them, because there's always a new one that you come across, but I've come across the one where the client says, hey, do what you think is best. Then there's the one where the client says, hey, these are the things I need. And about 50% of them are not even related to digital analytics. And then you also get the type where you do an implementation, and then 6 months later they'll call you up saying, "Hey, we tweaked it here and there, but it's not working again anymore." So, they're, like you said, the consistency is not only around the tooling, but also with how you approach implementation, because it's
but and then you have the last version, which is you ask the customer, "So, what do you want me to track?" And they'll look at you like you're an imbecile and say, "Everything."
Oh yeah.
right? And
Sure.
then that's kind of I've really come across those a lot. I want to track everything.
Track it all, analyze it later. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a part of my storytelling right now, saying that I feel we need to go from we have had a data first approach. So it's kind of, so we track all this, and then if we track everything, then we can make all decisions afterwards.
Yeah.
Right.
But this is probably the point where you're going to say that's kind of a fallacy.
Yeah.
In that you need to start with the use case.
Yeah, because if you try to track everything, and I think that's what I see in a lot of companies is that if you try to track everything, then you also have to maintain everything.
Yeah.
So everything becomes a maintenance job, and there's always somebody breaking. You're kind of a janitor of a super hotel with no patience.
Yeah.
And there's always something breaking somewhere. So you have to run around and change the light bulbs and fix the plumbing
But let's be honest. I mean, the vendors were pushing for this as well. They still are. Google enhanced measurements. I mean, scroll. Have you ever seen a good case for scrolling, other than landing pages, maybe? Or
yeah. So in reality, it's kind of it might have been able to trigger a time call in relation to content by saying, have people actually read it? But that's it. Right?
Yeah.
So.
I used to use tools like I think it was called Crazy Frog, Crazy Egg. That's the one where you would have the scroll heat maps to see how, and those were the ones I was actually printing out and saying, hey, if we look at this heat map, we can see that, this amount of content on the page gets consumed before, attention drifts off. But it's, so many of these solutions. I think even Mixpanel at one point had this, collected all, where they would just, or was it Segment? They would just listen to every event and just say, hey, if it's an event, send it through. We don't.
Yeah, and today you have the heaps and the post hocs. It's the same thing, right? It's like
LFR was the Shopify one, but indeed the heap, where you can just, I think is heap the one where you kind of, you go through a navigation on the website, you right click and say, hey, track this. And
I think heap actually goes in and it automatically tracks everything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of thing. So and then you reclassify it afterwards, saying, okay, I think this is, and I think you then can name it by.
That's right. Yeah. And then you can post active, retroactively label them, and it will reprocess everything that it's collected until then. And
I think for some websites, that can be really valuable. Yeah. But it's few, and especially if you have like huge websites, then it's absolutely not. Then it just becomes a big giant pile of data, right? So I think that's really complicated, because do you ever use it? And I think that's kind of my story right now, right? Going in and talking about saying that I feel we've had this data first approach for so many years, and then if we had all the data, we could make all the decisions. And where I feel that we're becoming better now, and that's my hope for the future, is flipping it and then talking to people about, so Matthew, what decisions are you making? What is your bonus based on? And I will tell you if I have some data that can help you do this.
That's the way to sell it.
What are you being measured on? What are your success criteria? What's your responsibility?
Yeah.
Because 80-90% of what's in there is completely redundant for most people. Yep. It has no value if we don't. You can go to 99% for most people of the data in the analytics. It's like, that's really interesting for somebody else.
Yeah, but I think that coming back to your CMO story, I mean, Avinash Kaushik, I don't know if he coined the term, but the hippo. It comes to that. That's what it feels like. Somebody comes within with a lot of experience to say, hey, this is what I used in my previous job. This is what I want to use here. Is that something you're still seeing to this day, or are you starting to see changes in how companies are approaching the data? Are especially with you asking a different type of question? What is this? How is this going to benefit you? Or I found something in the data that might benefit you.
Yeah. So, but it's also part of changing the narrative. That is, we need to tell another story, because we've been telling the same story for 25 years. And the CEO is still sitting there somewhere saying, hey, wasn't that the guy who promised me insights and actions and data-driven returns 25 years ago? Let me
Yeah.
look at how much money I spent on him so far. Oh my, holy God, right? It's like,
Don't
what
tell
is,
him. Don't
yeah,
tell him.
don't tell him. No, exactly. And that's why we keep changing the tools so they cannot go back and look at it.
They probably need to do that with their accounting software as well. It's like, hey, did we work with this guy like 6 years ago? So I don't know. We were using something else back then.
Yeah, exactly. Time
We
change, man. It's like,
No, but it's true. I think, and it's funny that you mentioned the narrative, because when I look at how these vendors are selling, especially in the CDP world where I'm mostly active now, you still see that same behavior. You know, the hippo, the Salesforce that get pushed in because a board member got it off an advice from someone that it needs to be shortlisted in the assessment phase, or they're looking at a lot of the product marketing material for a specific product, but they're not starting the question at what are we trying to solve for? And if we want to try to solve this, which tool is going to best fit not only, and that's the last one I want to mention, is that how does it fit in with our current stack? How does it fit in with our skill level, but also the cultural level? I recently spoke to someone who asked me, because I won a contract and he didn't, and I think it was like a year later or a year and a half later, he asked me. He asked, how did you win that contract? And my assessment was it was just a better cultural and social fit with that company. And I think even with vendors, there needs to be a consideration around that cultural fit too.
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually done something very similar to yours, in the sense that if somebody comes and asks for a tool, what we try to do is we've done like a 4-dimensional, I call it 4-dimensional, 4 dimensions. So we look at saying the first, what's the itch it's going to scratch? What is the tool supposed to do? What is the solution what is it going to give you? Right.
Yeah.
And then the second level is saying, what is the community and recruitment and abilities to find people who can use this tool?
That's an important one. Absolutely. Yeah.
So can we train them? How expensive? Adobe is Adobe would be an amazing tool, except that it sucks in this part. It's probably its weakest point in the entire stack is that it's impossible to find people who are willing to work full time for you as an Adobe person, because they get headhunted or they just go rogue and become consultants. And then
and there are plenty of examples of those. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And then the third dimension is exactly integrations.
Yeah.
What other stacks, what other tools are it supposed to work with? So where else would you need the data and having those dimensions? And then the last one, and this was kind of I'll tell you why we came up with this, but the last one is risk factors. Is there any problems with this tool? So it's like, we're the leading provider, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
They all are.
You're 2 guys. This is a side hustle. Am I really going to recommend this enterprise implementation to somebody? Because can you handle it? Are you going to go down or worse? Are you going to get acquired? And then the tool is going to get depreciated, and then you need to replace it with something else. And then, of course, where I came in, where I started have this thinking was, when Google Analytics was claimed illegal, right? Yeah. There was so many tools that went online saying, we are the leading alternative to Google Analytics. And then was like, that made me think and saying, when is something actually an alternative to something else? When are you an alternative to something, right? And it was like, we're the leading alternative to Google Analytics. Yeah, but you don't do e-commerce tracking. Well, besides that, it's like, okay, but
for everything else, yes.
Yeah, for everything else, but mainly they were the leading alternative on the risk management. They were the leading alternative because they were compliant, and on Google Analytics weren't.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the leading alternative, because we're more compliant than they are. So that was not looking at the business at all. So I was like, okay, how do you compare something to something else?
Yeah.
And then that's kind of what you're doing. You're adding the culture dimension. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. No, but same back at you. The whole community I've seen that happen time and time again. And I don't want to bash the guys over Telium, but Telium is another one of those tools where I was working for a bank, and they said, "Hey, can you make an assessment? Do we stick with Telium or do we go to a Google stack?"
Mm.
And one of the factors that I did pull in is like, all right, do a search. How many people looking for full-time employment have Telium skills compared to the freelancers and the contractors out there, and do the same for Google. And it's clearly that, Google and that essence has a much stronger community out there, and it's much more open and available or more easier to gain experience with the solutions as well, because it's, a lot of it is free. A lot of these marketers start with smaller junior jobs. They work themselves up. They get more experience, and they get ready for the big leagues. But Telium, they are the big leagues. You usually just run the risk of getting very dependent on agencies. One company was spending more on the agency than on the actual tool because they didn't have the people to actually write SQL and get the work done. But I find that interesting. I know the risk factor because, it never seems to get boring in the analytics world. There's a lot of this factors to take into account, and the risk assessment being one of them. Although the alternatives that have popped up for Google have matured very nicely now. And they're definitely out there.
Yeah. But actually, it's one of the scenarios I'm proud of, talking about the doing the culture thing, right? Because I was called in to do like a Danish telco already they were using Adobe, and they were like, yeah, they wanted me to do an assessment whether they should change to Google. And I looked at their Adobe and I looked at how they were using it, and my conclusion to them was saying, well, they shouldn't do either, because if they didn't start using it, because I was just a waste of money for doing it. So they should get rid of both of them.
That's brutal.
But that was kind of the culture, right? Saying, sure, you have the numbers, but if nobody's looking at them, it's just a cost. You're just wasting time. So
and either way, they're not cheap tools. I think even for Adobe, is probably even more expensive than Adobe or Google Analytics would be for a premium account.
No, but I think it's fascinating saying that, actually going in, and they were kind of surprised, saying that was my conclusion. But it's so basic, right? Saying that's like, okay.
But here's the $1 million question. How did they respond? Are they still using Adobe Analytics today, or are they using Google Analytics? What have they done since? Did they take it into account, or
they took it into account, and they took it to heart, and they switched to Google Analytics because the barrier was the Adobe training.
Okay.
Right? So, and that was kind of the onboarding for Adobe, even though they already had it implemented.
Yeah.
So you're standing and looking at this. It's back to the scenario of saying, no, it's not working. And then trying to, it's not us, it's the tool. It's always the tool.
Always. Right? Yeah. That we need to have t-shirts with that. It's always the tool. But there's another, should I call it an idiom? I don't know. It's always the tool. I think you probably come this across with almost every engagement that you have. Why do we always tend to lean, in your opinion, towards that, to blaming the tool? I have an answer in my mind, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts around that.
So I think I've been talking a lot with people about self-perception. And I think so the most difficult thing to do with anybody is saying, no, Matthew, you suck at Martech. Right? So for you, that would be your entire self-definition. You're a Martech specialist. And it's like, it would be really difficult. You would get in a fighting mood if we were in the same room and say, I said something like that, and I actually meant it, right?
I'd stop buying you beers for one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. That's really taking it personally. But people will do a lot to defend who they see themselves as.
Yeah. So self-protection.
Yeah. So they will go to extreme length to do that. So I think that's a huge barrier in relations to getting people to say, no, man, you're really bad at using the tool.
Yeah.
But, no,
No, but I mean, it's a discussion I think that happens with any tool within marketing technology. It's always the tool. And I was reading this book by Chiang Kai-Feng, Humanizing Data Strategy, and he touches upon this, where he actually has there were a few kind of ideas in there, suggestions, and one of them was that HR, for instance, needs to really get more involved in everything that surrounding data within a company, so that when they do start the hiring process, they are able to select more better candidates who are adept or I mean, you can always train skills, but who are open and able to understand the implications of data for a company. So, and this not touching upon, hey, does he know how to work with Google Analytics? And the other one, which just is, oh yeah, cross-stacking. That was the other one. I really found that one interesting. Is that, and I've never actually seen it happen in the business world, is that one of his suggestions is that you as a data engineer or as a data scientist or just a digital analyst, you go work with a data engineer for a while. You know, just like for like 4 days, 1 day a month for 4 months, to try to understand the point of view of a data engineer towards how that data is collected, how it's processed, prepped and made available for that analyst, and vice versa, so that the data engineer gets an understanding from the analyst to understand, you know, what are they cooking with the ingredients that I'm sending to their kitchen. And I've had this in the past, and I've tried to do that with projects that I've been on. Getting the engineers who wrote all the code, the back end, the front end, to say, hey, this is what you were able to realize, and being able to show the results for that, and vice versa. How do you push for that within companies, or what would your kind of strategy be to deflect the argument from, let's blame it on the tool, it's not you, it's something else that needs to be changed?
I think from my part, it's actually part of the change in narrative that I'm talking about. I'm saying, so right now we're in a place, we've been talking about getting more data, and now we need to focus on the data activation.
Yeah.
And to actually go and make the data do stuff. That's what we promised in the beginning, right? So and maybe we still need to do better tracking, but we need to kind of talk about the value add instead, because I think it's if we don't focus on what is the value that we're bringing to the table, then there will be no data engineers, and there will be no tools, right? Because and I see it kind of now in the consolidation around the tools, that I have a lot of customers that had been in the situation where they've gone out and they bought 50 Swiss Army knives, and one they put out the knife and one they put out the corkscrew, and well, they didn't buy them, they subscribed to them. And then they have all these different tools on the table, and sometimes they use the corkscrew and sometimes they use the knife, but technically they could just have one and then use it, but because it's like different approaches, so you don't get the unified tool thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if it answers your question, but
it's just because I see so many of these so-called digital transformation projects fail.
Yeah.
Everyone says they understand what data is, what data can do in a company. But if you were coming back to your, changing the narrative and saying, hey, what's going to help you get your bonus this year?
Yeah.
The kind of the counter question I have is that, for let's say a CMO, that answer is going to be very different from a CTO. How do you make sure that they don't block each other's progress? So let's say a CTO has a reduction on further expansion of data analytics implementation in the organization, while the CMO says, hey, but we need to activate more, we need more data points. Doesn't that cause a conflict within the company itself? But how do you, who's responsible for changing that narrative then?
I think so. First off, we are, and where we need to change the narrative, and it's not complicated, but it's tricky. It's actually, changing the focus on the tools for a tool to an investment. So if you go to the CFO and say, okay, cool, we're paying 100,000 euros a year for this tool. This should be recuperated by the tool. So how do we measure if we're getting that money back from this tool? How do we measure that? How do we set it up? Because then you actually go in and you have a business justification for the tool. Right now, the tool is financially placed on a recurring cost.
Yeah.
So it's never getting evaluated as an investment. It's just a tool. So when it comes up. Do we still need this tool?
Always was when we say, yeah.
Yeah. Unless it's like, oh no, the guy who used it left last year, so we can get rid of that now. But I want this one instead.
Are you seeing companies or CFOs who are challenging this internally these days?
Yes, I am, because I think what we have is we've had I see a lot of companies that have been in a situation that every time they had another problem, they solved it by adding a new tool. So if you look at the classic digital transformation circle, people, processes, and tools.
Yeah.
So these days we just have like a massive blob of tools and a little tiny circle of people one place and a tiny circle of processes another place. And every time there's a problem, we squeeze in another tool and think it will solve it. And it doesn't. So what we have is tool bloat.
Yeah.
To a large extent. And the only person who can come in and say, okay, we got to stop this is the CFO, because you can say every time you add a tool to any running business, you slice off a thin slice of the profit margin.
Yeah.
Right? So the cost of tools is something that is actually, if we didn't have the tools, if we didn't have the people using these tools,
that could be an interesting business model for an agency. Say, hey, what do you pay for that? Like, well, 200,000 euros a year. Well, give us 50%. We'll make sure that it's optimized and return your money. Yeah.
So because
or dump it.
Yeah. So, but everybody wants to. So if you look at the vendors, they just want to sell another tool, right? Yeah. We were Adobe partners in a period, and it was kind of like horrible. It was okay, but they were so American in their approach. So we just sold an Adobe license, and then like next week they were like, upsell this. They also need to buy this, and there's like, yeah, but okay, and the customer's like, dude, I just bought a car from you. I cannot drive it now, and it's there. The wheels are not on, and now you want to sell me a helicopter? Get the fuck out of here!
It's a new car. Why do I need new tires? You know. But is that changing at all? Because I did have a discussion with a company at one point. I won't name them, but I said, hey, it's great that you're trying to sell it, but I did offer the question, where does the responsibility lie for all the, this constant, this tool bloat, for this churn in solutions? Do these vendors play an active role in supporting that?
Though they play an active role in the tool bloat. They want to sell you another tool. and
all these drip campaigns.
Yeah, but it's like and when everything has been sold out, then they invent a new category, and you have to go from like a data platform to your customer data platform to your customer experience data platform. So it kind of they're mutating to be able to grow.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, technology does also push that change, though. I mean.
Yeah, but I'll double dare you saying, okay, then tell me an organization that has invested in people on the same level as they invested in new tools.
Yeah, no, I'll throw in the towel there. That's not happening.
No.
I remember Avinash many years ago. He said, what was it, the 20/80 rule or 90/10 rule?
90 something, yeah.
Do you know of a company who ever did that?
I've only heard of one presenting a case, and that was so very convincing presentation. VIX,
okay, yeah.
I heard a presentation from, I guess, I can't remember her, Michael, their former head of analytics. I don't know if she's still there. She said that with VIX, 10% of the people in the organization were analysts.
That's a lot.
And it was like that they had like this that everybody every page basically in the checkout flow and every product had their own combination of an analyst, a designer, and a developer,
Yeah.
and their only role was to use the data to improve the flow through that page.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting because I came across one company like that as well, and it's interesting because you get to work one on one with these. They call them product managers, but it's
Yeah,
more like it's either kind of the check. There was one company who had somebody for the checkout flow, and then somebody for the final page, the thank you page.
yeah,
So all these different teams. But the interesting part there is that you do kind of break it down into easy to eat chunks
yeah,
and say, hey, this is what you need to focus on in terms of analytics, and you help them, you explain how to implement it. But yeah, that gets totally off rail from the 10-90 rule, but
yeah,
it's I hope they're out there. But investing in people,
yeah.
that is, yeah.
Because I have actually sometimes given the challenge, and you can just say, especially on the company side, saying, okay, so you know how many organizations you come into, even fairly large organizations, that they have like one or two analysts. And then talking to if they have a tech savvy guy saying, okay, listen, what if I said, tomorrow you'll have 20 analysts. Could you monetize them? And, and, and
That's
the,
a good question. Yeah.
but the interesting thing is the answer, because the answer actually from most of them is, well, not tomorrow, but I think I could. And that means that there is tons of uh, underutilized data in the systems
Yeah.
that people know they could monetize, but they don't have because they're too busy doing maintenance. They're too busy doing dashboards and reporting and random stuff that doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, but that kind of does push the or promote the idea that hiring people yourself, and I mean this is bad business for myself because I'm an external consultant, but having people internally work for you is an easier way to understand the context of all that data. Like you said, if you brought in 20 people to work with it and you've got buckets loads of data, being full time embedded fully within the company is the best way to actually try to a way to understand all the possible variables or combinations of that data that you could use to help leverage. Yeah, I also think it's a difficult question because it does need time unless you have use cases piling up where you just don't have the people for it. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you but technically bringing in people gradually or having some variation of that, but I do think it's an interesting question. But it's kind of the same thing with. I've been having this question I ask people saying, so why did anybody hire you? So from a
This,
stage, it's kind
this is sober, right? This is not at the bar after one or two
nope.
beers.
No.
Sober.
It's not in a evaluation. It's kind of a self-reflection thing saying, so why does anybody hire anybody? Why do
Yeah.
they hire you, Matthew? They hire you because they think the business will be better with you in it.
Yeah.
So it's a business decision. So that means that all employees are an investment.
That mirror is very confrontational, but those are good questions to have,
Yeah,
though.
but especially because a lot of analysts get lost in the data, so they go
Yeah.
home and they feel, yeah, I set something up, or I made a report, or I made a dashboard. But so if you're the investment, have
Yeah.
you created your own salary today for the business?
Yeah. Not to turn the tables to myself, but I've actually quit a job one time because the value that I was generating was not being used, and I was like, well, I'll go generate value somewhere else then.
Yeah. Yeah. I was considering at one point having T-shirts made with the term trophy analyst. It's kind of like a trophy wife, right?
Yeah.
So somebody you hire, so you can, when you're playing golf, you can refer to, yeah, sure, we have 6 analysts. Yeah, your harem.
They've all got the T-shirts on,
Yeah,
just sitting
exactly.
there.
Because they're kind of just going through the moves. I came across, I can't remember the term. It was like I actually used it recently. So it's what's it? So in the story goes that in the Pacific
Yeah.
after the Second World War, the Americans had been there and they had bases and they were going patrols and if they did specific things, then an airplane would come by and drop food.
Yeah.
And that was super cool. That was American precision. But the natives were watching this. So when the Americans left, they started doing the same things as I think it was called cargo cult.
Okay.
So they built a plane of hay. They had coconuts on their ears. They had walking around.
No way.
So they were doing all the moves, but because they wanted the planes to come and drop food.
No, really?
Yeah, really. So yeah, there's amazing pictures of this cargo cults you can find online.
Oh my goodness.
And that's kind of so some organizations are more cargo cults, right? They're going through the motions, but they're not really getting the results. And they're doing all the right things, but they're not really using the tools of what the tools are supposed to, and they just doing the moves.
And that's when they call you the cavalry.
They call you. It's like saying, but I want to loop back to a question you asked before, saying, okay, why do we have all these tools? What's the problem? Why do we keep all these tools if they just? And I think it's because there's nobody who's accountable. Nobody has the responsibility for this.
That's an open wound right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, so Matthew, who's responsible for all these tools? And you're like, Steen, don't be silly. We all are.
Yeah.
Right? We all bought these tools so we could all create value. And I'm not going to tell Bob over there that he can't have his tool, because then Bob will come to me and say, I can't have my tools. And it's kind of like the kindergarten. We all have our own tools and we like to play. And sometimes we play with tools together.
A red stapler,
Yeah. Nobody can come and take our tools away, right?
No. But I mean, that kind of comes back to blaming the tool, the whole accountability thing. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, sure, you can hold the tool accountable, but then that would be the vendor if it doesn't function well enough, and if there's actual proof for that. But I think accountability, is that something you'd envision on an individual level or team level or department or a C-level head?
Yeah. So I call it. So I think it's about somebody having a mandate. Yeah. Actually do something, and it could easily be somebody sitting in financials that also is responsible for so it could be a chief commercial officer. It could be somebody sitting outside this stack saying, okay, this is a leverage that we're supposed to use to get more momentum, supposed to do something.
Yeah.
Do we get this? And if we don't, then okay, cool. Listen, you have 6 weeks to prove this, and otherwise I'm pulling the plug on your tool. Show me the money. Right?
I'm so surprised that a lot of these tools don't have a way in them to show the indirect value that they're generating. I think I once gave an example of Canva. I've got Canva Pro, and every time I drag in a pro element, it'll say, hey, using this pro element, it saved you, and with a pro account, saved you €2. Yeah. And I'm curious, that's probably the model that they're using in the background to calculate, hey, how much value is he getting, or is this person getting out of the tool? Yeah. Do you think that's something like that we could? There have to be some creative ways to get those kind of figures into the platform, or at least in front of the CFO.
Yeah, man. So I know Marianne Stjernvall, she got hired by Co-op in Sweden to build their Crow program.
Yeah.
And her first stakeholder that she engaged with was the CFO. She went in and had conversation with him saying, so how do we make this measurable? How can we tie this into the business so you see the value that I bring in? And that changed the focus, and that made a massive backup in the organization. And turned out that by doing this first, that it was like, conversion rate optimization drove 32% of the revenue growth in the organization. So because she had done the model first, and then built. So it's kind of going back to what decisions are you going to make. And for her, it was his decision that he was going to make. Are you going to support this or not? Will you enable me to hire another person? Will you? Because she knew that if she didn't prove it to him, if she just went to the CMO and said, well, we improved conversion rate with X%, crickets, then he would have to go to talk to the CFO and say, hey, I want Marianne to get more money. So why? Well, she improved the conversion rate. And it's like, what's that? Right? So making it as tangible in the organization is really important.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what you mentioned. It's culture.
Is that? Do you see that changing now as more and more people from? I mean, you've been in this business quite a long time. I've been in it in 20 years. I hope that we are slowly seeing a new generation of people coming into places and businesses that will actually drive this culture.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's a maturity that's coming. It's and compared to a lot of other stuff, we are a very young industry.
Yeah.
Right. And the challenge, we're a young industry with an embarrassingly high change rate in tools and platforms. Right. So we never get a chance to prove anything before somebody has sold another tool or moved off in another direction or has hit the next fad.
Yeah.
So and I think this is one of the places where AI can come in and help us process or do the processes for some of this stuff, so we can focus on the value creation.
Yeah. Yeah, unsupervised learning, but then in a more mainstream way.
Yeah, or with agents tackling specific things in relation to specific jobs. So I used a case from one of our customers saying, okay, I talked to her over the last 2 years. She was a chief digital officer in an organization of fast-moving consumer goods. She went from 10 people to 5 people because the margins were being stretched, right? But she was still being expected to deliver the same things. And I was like, okay, cool. And she was like, well, I never have any time to look at the data. And I say, okay, but let me set up some dashboards. I don't have time to look at the data. Okay, so we have built like a Chatanalytics for another customer. So you can just sit down and you can ask the question saying, how did we do yesterday? And she was like, I don't have time to sit down and write anything. I was like, okay, so what can we do? We can put a Google Home on your desk. Yeah, okay, so you can ask it the question when you come in the morning. So how did we do yesterday? And while you go around doing other stuff, it will brief you. And it's like, yeah, that could be okay, but I don't have time to follow up on any of this because then I would have to sit down and send mails. I was like, okay, so what we can do is you can tell it what to do. Okay, send this information to Bob that he needs to change the bidding, and send this to Susie that we need new graphics. And you were like, yeah, okay, I could use that. But that's completely detaching people from the data and making everything about the decision. And since we cannot have, but that is where the agents can come in and kind of help us chew things and make sure that the data is moved. I don't think we're in a place. The maturity is horrible right now in trying to just hand it over and say, okay, there's this. What was it? Probably 2 dimensions to it was Mark Zuckerberg say, well, yeah, just give me your entire marketing budget, and I promise you, I can, with AIs, I can make you outperform what you're doing now. Yeah. Like, first off, dude, I would never trust you with my money because you're the least credible person in global Martech, right? Because you would kind of skim it and put it in your own pocket. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I don't know. I read a case where I think it was Carnegie University. They went in and they said, okay, let's try to do a purely AI run project. So they took a lot of agents, they put them on Slack, and they were supposed to solve something. And I think
did I see this one? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it for you. I just saw it. And it ended up where it was different models discussing, and somebody suddenly proclaimed itself the project leader, and one kept just asking questions and never doing anything. It was kind of like, and they measured them, and I think Claude was the most efficient one, and it only managed to deliver 23%, and the other ones were worse. So this idea of saying, yeah, we'll just give everything to AIs, it's like,
There's
yeah,
a lot
sure.
of, I mean, that brings us all the way back to risk assessment.
Yeah. And of course, like I say, it will never be worse than it is today, but it is pretty bad today. So please be wary. Don't trust AIs to do everything.
Yeah.
You need people in the processes still.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I fully agree. And but I think the maturity among us users is growing fast enough to be able to recognize when people are copy and pasting, or just not even giving any consideration themselves over the insights that have been generated. Because I think in a lot of cases, the context, ironically enough, the context is missing to what that data needs to be able to change within an organization, and how that's all linked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steen, thank you so much for your time today. It's as I recently mentioned to someone else, it's always humbling to talk to thought leaders on a one-to-one basis for almost an hour now, and that's probably one of the main reasons I started this. And it was great finally being able to talk one-on-one with you without all the loud noise around measurecamp. But I do hope to see you there again in the future.
Yep, you probably will. So, and just know that we could probably have talked an hour more, but we can do that at another time when you need to.
Yeah, with a beer and maybe at a measurecamp, we can probably do that.
Cool. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Have a great week, and we'll speak soon.